At 5:41 local time, the Strait of Hormuz is only starting to glow beneath a thin band of dawn when the first warning cuts through the routine. Bridge CIC, new surface emissions north of track, stand by. On the flight deck of USS Abraham Lincoln, yellow shirts are already moving around parked aircraft. Deck crews weave between tow tractors and chain down Super Hornets. Nothing feels urgent yet. Nothing sounds out of place. The carrier keeps a steady course through the narrow channel, while its escorts hold disciplined positions ahead and off the sides, every ship in the formation moving like part of one larger system. Then a second call comes in, sharper than the first. Multiple fast movers just painted, bearing 038, low altitude, high speed. That changes everything. Inside the Combat Information Center, displays that were calm only moments ago begin filling with fresh tracks. Small symbols appear low over the water, coming from the Iranian side of the strait. They are not civilian, not commercial, not random. Their speed is off, their altitude is off, and their timing is far too precise. The tactical action officer leans toward the screen, eyes fixed. Confirm track quality. Firming now. Electronic support. Coastal radar active. Multiple emitters. No one raises their voice. They do not have to. Training takes over long before emotion has a chance to. On the bridge, the captain steps closer to the forward windows as if the dark horizon itself might answer faster than the sensors. Set general quarters. Tighten the screen. Alert the air wing. I want combat spread now. The alarm rolls through steel passageways and ready rooms. General quarters. The sound moves through the ship in waves. On the flight deck, sailors pause for half a second, then switch instantly into a different rhythm. Tie-down teams secure what was already secured. Elevator crews stop movement. Ordnance personnel clear exposed areas. Every casual motion disappears. Every step becomes exact. Overhead, the Combat Air Patrol hears the call and turns at once. Lincoln, Raider 11, we copy GQ, pushing north sector now. Raider 11, be advised. Possible inbound anti-ship profile. Picture still developing. Ahead of Abraham Lincoln, one destroyer edges slightly east. Another widens west. Each ship shifts just enough to reshape the defensive layout around the carrier. To anyone unfamiliar, it is barely noticeable. To the people inside CIC, it is the formation sharpening itself. Track count now 6, a watchstander says. Possible more in clutter. Classify. Still low confidence. Could be cruise missiles, could be one-way drones, could be mixed package. The most dangerous answer is not uncertainty. The most dangerous answer is a mixed package. Different speeds, different altitudes, different guidance challenges, all converging in the same patch of sky and sea at once. That is how defenses get overwhelmed. That is how a carrier strike group faces a real test. On the carrier's island, lookout teams scan north through binoculars into the gray line where sea meets land. Still nothing. Only haze. Only distance. Then CIC breaks in again. Tracks accelerating, now 8 confirmed. Vector holds carrier axis. Carrier axis. Not the destroyer screen, not merchant traffic, not some empty stretch of water. The captain says nothing for a moment. When he finally speaks, his voice is low and steady. They're coming for Lincoln. At 5:44, the first radio call goes out over open frequencies. Unidentified airborne contacts approaching U.S. naval formation in international waters. This is a United States Navy vessel. Alter course immediately or defensive action may follow. No response. A second transmission follows. Same result, only static answers back, along with the low hum of systems working harder by the second. Inside the escort destroyers CIC, SPY, radar locks grow firmer. Fire control solutions begin to take shape. Electronic warfare operators start sorting emissions from the northern shoreline. Search radars, tracking radars, guidance support. There are now enough signatures to erase the final illusion that this might be simple posturing. The carrier gives a faint shudder as speed and rudder are adjusted just enough to complicate terminal guidance if anything slips through. Flight deck crews feel the change through their boots. They do not need anyone to explain it. They already understand. Visual. A lookout calls from high on the island. Low over the water, north sector. Heads snap in the same direction. At first, it is only movement. Dark forms skimming just above the surface, where the dawn light still struggles to reach. Then those shapes sharpen into something unmistakable. Incoming threats, fast and hugging the surface, are using the sea itself as cover. Inside CIC, the distance drops with ruthless speed. 60 miles, 58, 55. The air controller pushes the cap farther forward, but this fight already belongs to the ships. The contacts are too close, too fast, too low. This is exactly the kind of moment the escorts were built for. Along the island and sponsons of Abraham Lincoln, sailors stare toward the northern horizon as flashes begin to break through the dim light. Not impacts, not yet. These are the first vertical launch cells opening aboard the screening ships. The formation has made its choice. The tactical action officer glances once at the captain's authorization, then back to the glowing tracks. Confirmed hostile inbound. Weapons free on designated threats. In the narrow waters of Hormuz, the U.S. Navy opens fire. The first interceptors leap from the escorts in hard white columns. At 5:45 local time, the sky north of USS Abraham Lincoln stops looking like dawn and starts looking like a battlefield. A destroyer on the carrier's eastern screen fires first, its vertical launch cells hurling standard missiles skyward in rapid succession. Less than 3 seconds later, a second ship answers from the western arc, building a crossing defensive umbrella over the strait and over the strike group itself. No one mistakes it for a warning. This is the first wall. Splash expected in 12. Track 13, continue. Track 132, still hot. Inside the lead destroyer's CIC, the tactical display has turned into a crowded mesh of symbols, vectors, altitude tags, and falling range numbers. The incoming group is no longer a theory. 8 confirmed hostile tracks are skimming low over the water, with at least 2 more trying to disappear inside surface clutter behind them. The first assessment still fits several of them, cruise missiles, but not all. One contact is slower and weaving slightly. Another appears to be transmitting in short bursts, possibly feeding targeting updates to the rest. A mixed package, exactly the kind of attack that forces a defending formation to think in layers instead of straight lines. The first American interceptor reaches terminal phase. From Abraham Lincoln's flight deck, no one sees the missile itself. They see what it does. A white flash blooms low on the northern horizon, then orange fragments burst outward over the sea. First splash, 1 down. No cheers, no wasted movement. CIC shifts instantly to the next threat. Track 132 still inbound. Assigned second shooter. The second destroyer commits. Another missile tears out of its launch cells, climbs hard, then dives toward the next incoming contact. On radar, the geometry tightens in seconds. On the bridge, the captain watches the repeater feed in silence. Then another flash. Second splash. For a brief moment, it looks controlled. Precise, almost textbook. Then the picture turns worse. New contacts bearing 029, lower speed, different axis. The controller says it once, and the whole room feels the meaning immediately. This was never a single wave attack. The first group was meant to force the screen open, force intercept decisions, force the defense network to light up. Now a second pattern is taking shape behind it, offset on a slightly different bearing, and moving at a different speed profile. Slower, lower, harder to sort, the kind of follow-on package built to exploit confusion. On Abraham Lincoln, the general quarter's tone has long since faded, but the ship is still moving inside its rhythm. Flight deck tractors remain locked in place. Ordnance teams stay tucked behind steel. Air crews in ready rooms pull on gear while listening to the fight unfold through internal comms and the heavy thud of launches outside. Above the formation, the Combat Air Patrol is already swinging north again. Raider 11, tally multiple heat blooms on shoreline. Possible launch support. Copy. Raider, hold outer screen. Do not overrun ship defense basket. The fighters want to push farther. The controllers do not allow it. Not yet. The airspace over the strait is filling with American interceptors, electronic noise, and unknown contacts. One mistake up there could put friendly aircraft inside the same defensive lanes the ships are using below, so the surface combatants carry the first real weight of the fight. Some of the incoming tracks react right away, wavering or drifting off their original line. Others stay locked in. Those are the dangerous ones. Track 136 unaffected. Track 141 still inbound. Fast. Recommend engage. Engage. Another pair of interceptors launches. Each shot sends a shudder through the destroyer's hull. Sailors topside feel the impact through steel, through bulkheads, through the soles of their boots. In the tight waters of Hormuz, every launch sounds heavier, sharper, closer. The third intercept comes high, the fourth comes late. And that fourth one is the moment nobody forgets. It stays alive longer than it should. It slips beneath the first engagement window, partly hidden by the sea itself, then shows up again at the worst possible angle, cutting toward the center of the formation. Not toward the screen ship, not toward the lead destroyer, toward the carrier. Leaker, leaker, track 141, inside close basket. For the first time, the words hit Abraham Lincoln's Island hard enough to stop even trained motion. Sailors in exposed positions turn north and finally see it for themselves. A dark, fast shape skimming just above the waterline. Too low, too fast, and now much too close. The nearest escort has no time left for another long-range shot. Its close-in weapon system spins up. The sound is not dramatic or cinematic. It is raw machinery at full violence, a ripping metallic roar as the mount locks on, tracks, and fires. Tracer streams tear through the dim air. The incoming threat jerks once, whether from guidance, logic, or damage, no one can tell, then breaks apart in a burst of sparks and debris less than 2 miles from the carrier's bow. A moment later, fragments slam into the water in a scattered line across the formation's path. On Lincoln, nobody moves for half a heartbeat. Then the ship seems to breathe again. Leaker destroyed, debris splash confirmed, carrier remains clear. But the relief lasts only a second. Back in CIC, operators are no longer focused on the first wave. Their attention is fixed on the second. More tracks are forming now, slower, offset, more deliberate. And behind them, airborne sensors are beginning to pick up something even more troubling. Possible queuing support deeper inland. Maybe drones, maybe remote targeting relays. Maybe something designed to keep guiding the attack even after the weapons already in the air are gone. The tactical action officer studies the fresh picture and says what nobody wants to hear. This wasn't the strike. He taps the new symbols building behind the wreckage of the first wave. This was just the opening move. At 5:52 local time, the first wave is still dying over the water when the second reveals what the attack was really built to do. Inside the strike group's combat information center, the new tracks do not look like leftovers. They look planned. Slower than the first salvo. Lower. Offset just enough to force the escorts into new decisions. With every second, the picture sharpens, and with it comes the worst realization a carrier screen can have in confined water. The first wave was never meant to destroy USS Abraham Lincoln. It was meant to open a lane. New contacts firming, 5 confirmed, possibly 7, bearing 031 to 036. Profile mixed, 2 fast, 3 subsonic, 1 intermittent. The intermittent contact draws attention immediately. It is not flying a clean path. It flickers on the scope, fades into surface clutter, then returns from a slightly shifted angle. Decoy, relay, terminal seeker support. No one knows yet, but it is there, and it is making every fire control choice harder. On Abraham Lincoln's flight deck, the change is complete. Every action not tied directly to survival has stopped. Deck crews stay low behind tractors, tie down chains, and whatever steel gives them cover. Aircraft that only minutes earlier were about to be moved now sit frozen in place. Wings folded, canopies sealed, ladders kicked away. The massive deck, usually all motion and sound, has turned into a platform waiting for the next impact that may or may not come. Below, the carrier begins a controlled turn. Nothing dramatic, nothing panicked, just enough rudder to bend the geometry, shift the aspect, and deny any incoming weapon a perfectly stable final picture. The escorts move with it. One destroyer slides wider to port. Another tightens along the carrier's forward quarter. The strike group is no longer just protecting a formation. It is protecting its center of gravity. Track 150 assessed carrier bound. No one in the room asks how the controller knows. The angle says it. The speed says it. Most of all, the fact that it ignored a simpler shot at the nearest screen ship says it. The Eastern destroyer commits first. Another interceptor blasts out of its launch cells and climbs hard. A second follows behind it. The launch rhythm is faster now, tighter, with less hesitation. Magazine discipline still matters, but not more than the carrier. Above the formation, Raider 11 and his wingman are pushed farther north. Raider, new tasking. Hunt the launch chain. Do not descend into ship basket. Repeat, do not descend. Copy. Pushing. The fighters surge toward the Iranian side of the battle space, searching not for the weapons already inbound, but for the network feeding them. Drones, relay aircraft, coastal emitters, anything keeping the attack coordinated. If the first wave was the fist and the second is the blade, then somewhere farther inland is the hand directing both. Back at the ships, the timing is brutal. One incoming track disappears inside jamming and wanders off harmlessly into empty water. Another is destroyed cleanly at range, flashing into fragments far north of the formation. But the third does something worse than survive. It drops. For 4 seconds, maybe 5, it sinks low enough to blend into the sea and vanish into the ugliest part of the radar picture. The zone where fast water, clutter, and metal all try to look the same. Lost track 150. Reacquire. Negative. Find it. The order comes out flat, but the pressure underneath it is solid iron. Then a lookout on Lincoln's Island shouts the words the console operators were trying not to hear. Contact low! Port bow! The missile is visible again, cutting just above the waterline, angling across the front of the formation toward the carrier's turn. It is close now. Too close for comfort, too late for anything elegant. An escort off Lincoln's port side slews its close-in mount and opens fire. The CIWS does not sound triumphant. It sounds like a machine tearing itself apart on purpose. A sheet of tracer fire slices low through the morning haze. For 1 second, the incoming weapon holds its line straight through the tracer stream. For another, it almost looks as if it might make it. Then it breaks apart. Not in a clean fireball, but in a violent burst of sparks, shredded casing, and burning fragments that skip into the water less than a mile from Abraham Lincoln's forward arc. Half a second later, the concussion reaches the carrier. Not a hit, but close enough that sailors along the island duck on instinct. Inside the ship, the shock can be felt through the deck, not impact. Just close enough for everyone on board to understand exactly what impact would have meant. Track 150 destroyed. This time, nobody feels relief. Only a few seconds of breathing room, because almost immediately another inbound lights up the display. Different track, different angle. This one comes in higher, then drops hard in terminal phase, trying to break through from above the clutter instead of below it. Track 153 now primary. The Western destroyer engages. One interceptor launches, then a second. The first misses wide when the target makes a late jink. The second catches it mid-turn and tears it apart in a pale orange burst off Lincoln's starboard quarter. Debris rains into the water behind the carrier. By now, even the most disciplined operators in CIC can see the pattern. These weapons are not attacking at random. They are trying to split the defense by profile. High, low, fast, intermittent, forcing every layer to respond on different terms until something finally slips through. Aboard Abraham Lincoln, damage control teams are already staged in place. Helmets on, gear ready, waiting in passageways for a hit that still has not come. That detail says more than any speech could. The crew does not think it is untouchable. It believes in being ready. Then at 5:58, the airborne controller catches the break everyone has been waiting for. Multiple launch signatures fixed. Repeat, fixed. Probable coastal missile site and one offshore support element. Coordinates transmitting now. In the carrier's flag spaces and the escort CICs, the meaning lands immediately. Up to this point, the strike group has been surviving. Now it has something better. A target. At 5:59 local time, the tone across the formation changes the moment those coordinates arrive. Until now, every move has been defensive. Track, classify, engage, survive. Now the geometry flips. Inside USS Abraham Lincoln's flag spaces, the strike group commander studies the feed coming in from airborne sensors, escort radars, and electronic surveillance teams. The pattern is finally clear enough to act on. One coastal launch site, one likely mobile radar element farther inland, and one offshore support node probably feeding targeting data or relaying the carrier's movement in real time. That is enough. Authorize immediate counter-response on confirmed hostile emitters and launch-capable nodes. There is no pause, no debate. The order moves through the formation in clipped, precise bursts. The fighters already airborne are retasked first. What had been a combat air patrol becomes a hunter-killer posture in less than a minute. The lead section receives target coordinates, confirms deconfliction with the ships below, and turns hard toward the Iranian shoreline. Raider 11 copies strike tasking. Priority target is coastal emitter linked to inbound profile. Confirm hostile chain before release. Copy. Confirming. Below them, the escorts do not ease off. The screen stays tight. Radar search volume remains wide. Electronic warfare teams keep scanning for one last leaker, one delayed shot, one final weapon meant to catch the strike group while its attention begins to shift toward land. This is the dangerous moment in any engagement. The moment after survival. The moment before certainty. Inside Lincoln's Combat Information Center, the atmosphere changes. It is still controlled, still technical. But the tight pressure of pure defense is gone. In its place is offensive tempo, the kind that forces the other side to react for once. A cruiser on the edge of the formation receives final confirmation on the coastal radar site. Its weapons team starts building a firing solution for a precise land attack response. Farther aft, another escort keeps track of the offshore support contact, a small, fast-moving surface element trying to drift back toward shallower water as the missile attack begins to fall apart. They're turning away. Log it. Keep eyes on. Recommend hold surface fires unless hostile action repeats. The answer comes back at once. Affirm. Stay disciplined. That is the American advantage in this moment. Not anger, not impulse. Discipline holds, even with the advantage shifting. At 6:02, the first strike fighters cross their push line. From the cockpit, the northern shoreline looks pale and motionless in the early light. But the sensors tell the real story. Heat signatures, vehicle movement, radar spikes rising and falling in frantic bursts. Someone on shore is trying to tear down equipment, move launchers, or vanish into the terrain before the response arrives. Too late. Raider 11, target emitter confirmed. Valid hostile link to inbound chain. Cleared. The lead jet rolls in. No dramatic dive, no unnecessary show, just enough angle to commit. Seconds later, precision-guided ordnance separates cleanly and drives toward the confirmed radar node. The pilot barely watches the result. He is already climbing and shifting for the next problem. Back at sea, the cruiser fires. A land attack missile launches from the formation and races north, low and fast, skimming over the water before turning inland toward the launch area that had fed the strike on Abraham Lincoln only minutes earlier. No warning flare, no spectacle. Just controlled force released by a ship still under combat alert. On the carrier, sailors who had been bracing for impact only moments earlier now hear outgoing power moving in the opposite direction. They cannot see the entire picture, but they know that sound. They know what it means when the force that was hunting them suddenly becomes the one being hunted. Over the target area, the first impact lands. Airborne sensors catch it as a sharp bloom, followed a fraction later by a heavier secondary burst. That second flash matters. It points to stored fuel, munitions, or both. Something at that site was fully active moments ago. Now it is out of the fight. Good hit. Repeat. Good hit. A second strike follows farther inland against the mobile radar unit, trying to relocate. This one is more difficult. The system is already moving, using terrain and bends in the road to break clean targeting. The wingman takes the shot. One pass, clean release. Seconds later, the road line erupts in dust, flame, and shattered metal. Inside Lincoln's CIC, both targets are marked degraded. Then the offshore support node makes its mistake. Whether it is a fast attack craft, a sensor boat, or a disguised relay vessel, it lights up just long enough. One brief burst of emissions, one last attempt to feed tracking data into a kill chain that is already collapsing. An escort destroyer is waiting for exactly that. Surface contact re-emitting. Confirm hostile support. Confirmed. Engage. The response is immediate and precise. No excess. No wasted fire. Just enough to silence the contact and remove it from the fight without turning the confined waters of Hormuz into a wider surface engagement. Minutes later, the radar picture where it had been goes empty. By 6:09, the strike group can feel the entire assault starting to unravel. Coastal emissions begin dropping one by one. Search radars go dark. Guidance support fades. Surface contacts that had been edging forward now turn away or stop transmitting altogether. The threat is not gone. The region is still dangerous, but the coordinated chain that nearly put a weapon into Abraham Lincoln has been broken in real time. On the bridge, nobody celebrates. The captain watches the updated picture and gives the next order in the same calm voice he used when the first inbound track appeared. Maintain alert posture. Continue transit. That says everything. The carrier was targeted. The strike group answered. And instead of stopping, it keeps moving forward through the strait. Behind them, fragments still drift where the second wave came apart. Ahead of them, the water is open again. For the moment. At 6:10 local time, the worst has passed, but no one inside the USS Abraham Lincoln strike group moves as if the event is over. Not yet. The carrier continues through the Strait of Hormuz at controlled speed. Escorts still hold a defensive shell around her. Radar search volumes remain wide. Electronic warfare teams continue scanning for anything that looks like a delayed shot, a concealed boat, or one last radar cue from the shoreline. The hostile chain has been broken, but this is Hormuz. Tight water, crowded lanes, too many places for one final threat to stay hidden. Inside Lincoln's Combat Information Center, the tactical display is no longer flooded with inbound tracks. What remains are aftermath symbols. Debris fields, retreating surface contacts, fading coastal emissions, and the steady blue geometry of American ships holding formation. Any new launches? Negative. Any reactivation from the northern sector? Intermittent search radar only, no fire control. That difference matters. Search radar means nerves. Fire control radar means danger. Right now, the shoreline sounds nervous. On the carrier's flight deck, movement returns in fragments. Not normal yet, not routine, but movement. Yellow shirts step back into the open. Chained aircraft are checked again. Catapult crews inspect equipment with the kind of care that only comes after something came very close to happening. Sailors glance north more often than they would admit, toward the haze hanging above the Iranian coast, where faint smoke still lingers over at least one of the sites that had launched on them less than half an hour earlier. The strike fighters are the first to come back. Over the radio, the voices stay clipped and professional. Raider 11, mission complete. One radar site taken out. Raider 12, mobile element struck, secondary blast observed. No one adds emotion. They do not need to. The report says enough. On a destroyer running just off Lincoln's quarter, the weapons team moves into the part no headline ever shows, counting interceptors used, reviewing defensive layers, reconstructing the engagement sequence, checking timing, identifying which systems fired first, and noting which threats pushed deeper into the formation than expected. One officer studies the printout and says what no one in the strike group is willing to downplay. That was not a token attack. No one argues. One weapon came close enough for the carrier's hull to feel it. Another forced a last-second terminal intercept. The first wave lit up the screen. The second wave went for the center. This was a real attempt, planned, layered, and timed for restricted water. And it failed. By 6:16, the offshore picture settles even more. The small hostile support contact that briefly re-emitted has vanished from the board. Other Iranian surface elements that had edged toward the battlespace are now widening the distance instead of closing it. Whether they were there to observe, relay targeting, or exploit damage if Lincoln had been struck no longer matters. Their window passed the moment the strike group survived the second wave and answered back before the smoke had even cleared. Only then does a helicopter finally launch from one of the escorts, not to press the fight, but to verify the aftermath. It sweeps over broken water, debris fields, and dark marks on the sea where close-range intercepts turn metal into scattered fragments. The crew reports no floating survivors, no active skiffs, no new wakes racing in from hidden coves. Above them, a Hawkeye continues its orbit, broad, patient, and watchful, holding its eye on the coastline like a lid pressed firmly over a boiling pot. On the carrier's bridge, the mood stays quiet. That quiet is part of the story. No victory speech, no shouting over the net. Just a chain of calm checks, each one proving the same reality in the language of steel, systems, and procedure. Formation intact. Air wing operational. No damage to carrier. Continued transit. That final line carries the most weight, because this was never only about surviving incoming weapons. It was about whether USS Abraham Lincoln could be stopped in one of the most dangerous maritime choke points on Earth. Whether a coordinated Iranian strike could turn the Strait of Hormuz into a trap and force an American carrier strike group to break posture, reverse course, or hesitate. It could not. By 6:22, full daylight has spread across the water. The sky is bright now, almost indifferent. Against the clean light of morning, the violence of 20 minutes earlier feels almost unreal. But for those who know where to look, the evidence is everywhere. Spent launch cells, logged tracks, scorched impact points ashore, crews still moving with that sharpened focus that lingers after combat. Abraham Lincoln keeps going. That is the final image. Not drifting, not disabled, not stopped, moving. The escorts stay tight. Aircraft begin cycling overhead again, and the strike group resumes the one thing the attack was meant to prevent: lawful transit under American control. Iran tried to stop a U.S. aircraft carrier in Hormuz. For several hard minutes, the attempt was serious enough to put real danger inside the formation. But serious and successful are not the same thing. They opened with speed, layered the strike, and came close enough that no one aboard Lincoln would ever dismiss it. Then the U.S. Navy did exactly what it was built to do. It absorbed the first blow, it stopped the second, it found the source, and it answered immediately. By the time the Strait of Hormuz was fully awake, the message was already written across the water in debris, silence, and a carrier still moving ahead. They tried to stop USS Abraham Lincoln in Hormuz.